Hey, business building warrior, welcome to this episode. We've got some guest hosts today that I'm going to turn the microphone over to in just a moment. They're becoming some fan favorites around here. Great feedback. Anytime we get Brian and Robin on here, guest hosting, and I love to see it. I learn from these guys every time I hang out with them, which is true of our entire coaching team. If you weren't aware, maybe you're new around here, this podcast is all about bringing you success story interviews with the students of the Proven Amazon course, which is our flagship course. You can get details. Go to silentjimdotcom. You can see our free Facebook group, our course, our coaching, and all that. But this show is dedicated to hundreds of interviews that have been conducted already with successful students from our program. And so many of those successful students have come through our coaching program. Two of our great coaches are Brian and Robin Olson, who you're about to meet in just a moment. They've done a good handful of episodes lately. If you're new around here, you didn't know that. If you've been listening to every episode, which why aren't you if you're not? You would have already heard these guys a few times lately, and they do such a great job. Today, we're going to dive into the topic of, man, I'm just not getting it. I'm trying to find profitable replens. We hear from people quite frustrated sometimes in our Facebook group, and we know it's the newer people typically saying things like, okay, I've watched the videos, I hung out in the group, I see all these people having success, but I'm just not getting it. It's not happening for me. Is this something wrong with me? What's the deal here? And Brian and Robin take this question head on today, including a step by step. And this is completely free. I mean, this is the kind of content that most courses charge a whole lot of money for. We're going to step it through one tiny little baby step at a time. Now, the thing to keep in mind about the REPLENS business, because I've listened to this episode already after Brian and Robin recorded it, it's phenomenal. You're going to love it. One of the things I want to point out after you've heard them kind of spell it out is no matter how long you do this business, there's always more that you can do to make your system better, to comb a little deeper. And imagine yourself panning for gold. There's always a slightly better spot in the river. There's always a better pan you could be using. There's always a better time of day or a better procedure. You could have better eyesight, perhaps, to detect. So the more experienced you become, the better you're going to get at this. But initially, if you're frustrated, there are some really solid tips today on how you can become like one of the hundreds of interviewed guests on this show who do get it. So if you don't quite get it yet, you're struggling to find those underserved listings, those replens that so many people are talking about, all those exciting success stories, and it's just not happening for you yet, today's episode is for you. And we really don't leave anything out. We spill the beans. But the one thing I want to make sure you keep in mind is this very easily could have been a 12-hour episode because there's always going to be more to learn. I've been doing this for many, many years, as have Brian and Robin, as have many people on our team. We've got 60 coaches helping our community. None of us know it all. Even the combined knowledge of all of us doesn't add up to knowing it all because things are always changing. New opportunities are always presenting themselves. But today is a great glimpse into how you can take a few basic steps in the right direction, make a focused effort, and start building a tremendous catalog of beautiful ASINs, beautiful listings on Amazon that sell on a repeat basis at a nice profit for you, minimizing the risks, maximizing your opportunity for return. And some of the things that I love that I want you to listen for today as Brian and Robin are talking that I specifically enjoyed is Robin and Brian talk about how when they started, I think Brian was just Brian at the beginning. He spent hours and hours and said he couldn't find anything. He was beginning to doubt there's something wrong with him. He was a coaching student first. Before he was a coach and a success story, he was a coaching student. He was a frustrated coaching student who'd spent hours and couldn't find anything. He was one of those people posting in the Facebook group saying, what's the deal? I don't get it. He called himself the king of not getting it just a few days ago when he was describing that early experience. I love that part of the show today where they talk about that. The thing that I enjoyed, something I really enjoyed, Robin points out about this system that we've mentioned several times, the REPLENS system as taught in the Proven Amazon course. Again, there's a link to the course at silentjim.com. That's the only link you need to remember, silentjim.com. But if you jump into the Proven Amazon course, there is training in there that steps you through this in such small steps that you're getting paid to learn. Unlike most courses where you pay all your money up front and then you hope to someday make your money back, the Proven Amazon course is very inexpensive. So you're getting paid to learn. You're running little tests, little experiments. Your return on investment for your learning process is beautiful if you're doing it the way that we lay it out. She contrasts that with like getting a college degree where you pay tens of thousands. And, I would even say you could potentially go hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt getting a degree. And then you hope that it pays off someday once you find that right career. That's not what we do here. We teach you what you need as you need it, step you through, and you're getting paid to learn, which I love that theme of today's episode, as well as we contrast the return on investment that people doing this business model are seeing as compared to, say, a 401k, where you'd be thrilled to get 8, 9, 10, 11% annualized on your 401k, your return on investment. With this, you can get those kind of returns every couple of weeks on the inventory that you're flipping, 10, 20% a month easily. As a worst case scenario, even in many cases, we're seeing 40, 60, 80% ROI on many of the items that we're flipping using this strategy. If you build a large catalog of items like that, it doesn't take long to have a pretty impressive business. And again, hundreds of people are doing it successfully. You can be one of those people. We'd love to step you through it. So let's jump over and hear Brian and Robin and hang out at the end of the episode, something I want to prepare you for. They were discussing, hey, we're going to be able to include this video or not at the end. We're not sure. Well, yeah, we do include the video. They talk about a video that really steps you through this process. We're going to tack that on the end here. So this is one of those episodes where you want to look for the YouTube link. If you're listening to the audio only and you want to hear the bonus video or see the bonus video that's at the end, you want to look for the YouTube link that's in the show notes. That'll take you over and you can scroll to the end and watch that segment. We'll probably drop that link in the Facebook group as well. So there'll be a couple different ways that you can watch that tremendous video that they put together that steps you through this 3-step process. Very simple 3-step process for determining, is this an ASIN? Is this a listing that I want to test against? And again, to reemphasize a point that I've made a couple times already, that 3-step process could be infinitely expanded upon, improved, changed, adapted to your needs. So don't look at it as the holy grail of all you'll ever need to know to source great replens, but it's a beautiful, simple system for saying within a couple minutes, in most cases, is the listing I'm looking at on Amazon right now one that I should consider testing against? It's not as complicated as maybe you're making it. So enjoy this episode with Brian and Robin. And please, one last announcement, plan to join them and me and so many of the other great coaches on our team, so many of the success stories you've heard from this program in Columbus, Ohio, July 6th through 8th, 2023. Theprovenconference.com has all the details. 3 words, theprovenconference.com. Get over there, check out the tickets, plan to join us. We've got a beautiful hotel at a great discounted rate. You do not want to miss this event. Hundreds of listeners to this podcast, successful students from our community, they're all going to be there. Join us. Hey, let's get Brian and Robin on the line right now. You're going to love this episode. This is a repeat listen. I can almost guarantee it. You're going to want to listen to this one more than once at some point. Talk to you soon.
Welcome to Silent Sales Machine Radio. We are your co-hosts. I'm Brian.
And I'm Robin Joy.
This is Coach's Corner. We're going to tackle a topic today that has been hot in the MST community as of late.
Yeah.
The dreaded, I hate this feeling.
Yeah. It's a common topic that comes on and off all the time because it happens to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, go ahead. The dreaded.
I've been at this for hours, days, weeks, and I can't find anything worth sending in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's common. And we all feel like that in the beginning. It's kind of tough because when you're new at it, you're not good at it yet. And you have to kind of give yourself a break. But we might have some tips and some perspective that might help you get through this period in the beginning.
But let's just stop there for a second. I like what you said, where we're talking about you're new at this. You're not good at this. This is something that you're watching someone, a lot of people in a community, thousands of people literally with success stories about how good they are in this business, right? But didn't happen overnight. You see the success story, but you didn't see the struggle in the background. And I know it's easy for everyone to say, like, oh, yeah, I figured this out in 2 months or 3 months or 4 months. And, a lot of people can do that. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are also natural, race car drivers. Yeah. They just sure. They get it. Or a lot of people are natural sprinters. A lot of people are natural I'm trying to think of stuff that doesn't require physical ability. A lot of people are natural leaders, right? They have that sort of stuff built in. Others of us, like me, takes a little bit of time to readjust and acquaint to what it is I'm doing, what the process is, what I'm looking for, what does success look like, all those types of things, so that when I do see success, or when I do start hitting some of those marks, I can clearly see that I am being successful. But it takes time. You don't just, wake up one morning and decide I'm going to be successful at this.
Right. Give yourself time. And remember, when you hear the stories of interviews, there are lots and lots of successful people in this community. It's a great community and it fosters success. That's why you're here, because you know that. But remember, those people telling those stories, including us, we all went through those struggles. But we forget about those struggles once we get past it. That's not our story anymore. And you'll have the same experience once you get through the hardest parts in the beginning.
You gave a great analogy when we were most recently on with Jim about going through pregnancy. Right? And going through labor and delivery, and how painful and what a struggle that is. But then as soon as you hold that baby, you forget all about it. Now, for those of us who can't bear children, then it's a little bit different of an experience. But I think we can relate to that still, right? How painful that is. But everything that you did was worth it, and you don't even remember it, because what the payoff on the other side made that so sweet. You would do it all over again, right?
So I will tell you, like I tell new scared mothers, whatever you have to go through, once you get there, it will be worth it.
Yeah. All right. So platitudes, stories, analogies, all this stuff is great. But how do I sort of self-diagnose how to improve in this process as I'm going through it? There's a lot of self-reflection, I think, that could be beneficial here.
Right. So when a client comes to you, Brian, and says, man, I've been putting in hours and hours and hours, and I haven't found anything that I can test. Where do you start with that? How do you help diagnose that and break it down for someone?
So there's an old 3-part mnemonic or whatever that pops into my head when I come across that. And that is, I know how you feel. I felt the same way, and here's what I found. And I can honestly say that with a straight face, because I have been there. I know exactly how you feel. I did feel the same way, maybe worse. It's all, it's tough to measure how we feel internally, but we all feel terrible when it's not going in our direction, right?
Natural.
And then I found what I found was the results. The results were, I went back to my coach, and I did leave a little post in MST about this as well. But I went back to my coach and said, geez, this is just not working out for me. I'm not finding anything. I've been at this for, 6-8 weeks. Nothing's really clicking. And my coach boiled it down like this. Tell me when you are sourcing, right? Tell me what days you're sourcing and what hours of the day you are sourcing. I had to create that sort of schedule, that commitment from me to her from an accountability standpoint to my coach. So do we have a schedule with dedicated hours? If you are kind of bouncing around and you don't really have a set schedule, that's probably step one that I would do.
Yes, I agree with that. That makes me think of a college class that I was taking a course, and I was required ahead of time to commit to the hours and the times of day that I would spend for that, because it was not believed that I'd be successful if I didn't have time carved out for this thing. And I think it's the same way with this. If you don't carve time out and dedicate yourself to sourcing during that time, there are other things you have to do in your business, but you need sourcing time. Then you're going to have a hard time being successful. And we see people who do that as a basic requirement for getting started, being much more successful, much more quickly.
It's so easy. Like you just said, there are other things that you need to do in this business. And it's so easy to let those things creep into the time that you have set aside for sourcing, right? So what we need to do in that case is make sure that when the time that we've set aside, we're actually sourcing. So let's not get distracted by some other things that make us feel productive in our business, but don't necessarily produce the results that we're looking for when it comes to being able to add items to our list of tests. So things that we're going to send into Amazon FBA, and test them to see if they're going to make it to our REPLENS list. What are some of those things that are that can easily distract you?
Oh, checking your email,
Mm.
getting a text, going in and reading the My Silent Team Facebook group.
Mhm.
Great thing to do,
Mhm.
but not during sourcing time.
Mhm.
Don't consider that sourcing time
Mhm.
because that's not sourcing. It is valuable. So keep doing that. Just set different time to do that. Listening to podcasts.
Mhm. Yes, if this is your sourcing time, stop this podcast right now.
Purchasing items,
Mhm. Mhm.
that you've already sourced,
Yeah.
purchasing replens. There are so many things, checking your sales.
Checking your repricer,
Yes.
answering customer emails, looking at your account health. I mean, there's an absolute need for those types of things to be done in the
Yes.
business, but not during sourcing time, right?
Right. So I think what we're trying to get at is if you set sourcing time to be sourcing time, and those are your hours, and it takes hours, especially in the beginning,
Mhm.
those are your hours to source. Keep those hours safe and tight and do only sourcing during that time. And you may see some benefit there to your results. So, number one, make sure you know when you're going to source, plan that. You can adjust it if you need to, but do it by plan.
Mhm.
And make sure that you are moving other things out of your way so that you can sit down and source during that time.
Yep. Have dedicated time. Don't get distracted, right?
And what we mean by sourcing, let's just clear that up as
Mhm.
well. What we mean by sourcing is finding ASINs that you can test that have a source. I mean, you won't know if you can test them or not until you find a source and know how much. So you need an ASIN and a source, a cost, and make a decision. That's what we're talking about, that process right there that you need to do with more and more ASINs so that you can build a list to send in for tests this week.
Right. So let's say that we're doing those things. Okay, we've done step one. We've set our calendar up. We've got dedicated time that we're spending on this. We still are not having the level of success that we would expect. What might be your next question or troubleshooting / diagnosis effort?
I would say if you are spending, let's say, 3 hours in a sourcing session, I would ask you, how many ASINs are you able to look at during that 3 hours?
Mhm.
So, you hear us saying in the training how we spend about, a minute or less on average on each ASIN because we've gotten pretty good at ruling them out and only spending time on the ones that can be good. But we've done this a lot
Mhm.
for years.
Mhm.
You can't expect that you'll be that quick and that easily make decisions that quickly with no experience.
Mhm.
So don't put that on yourself. It's going to take, you still should try to shorten that time, but it's going to take a little bit more time. So let's say it takes 3 times or 4 times as long as that. And you should probably be able to get to a yes or no answer within about 3 minutes.
Okay.
If you find a source, you should find a source during that time and make your assessment. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think 3 minutes is reasonable. It's easy also when you are looking up a product to fall in love with it and spend way more time on looking at that one. And that can be a distraction like some of the other things we were talking about, instead of just being able to rule it out super fast or as fast as you can, giving it every reasonable chance. And then when it doesn't work, move on to the next ASIN, right? So if we're doing 3 minutes and we've got 3 hours set aside, how many ASINs are we going to get through in that block of time?
You tell me, 20?
60. 20 an hour.
20. Oh, yeah, 20 an hour. That's what I meant.
Yeah. 20 an hour and 60 in a 3-hour sourcing session.
Right.
Okay. So I can look at 60 ASINs in 3 hours to kind of make that decision whether I'm going to be able to test that item or not. If I'm doing this manually, doing it myself. Okay. What is my success rate? If I'm looking at for every, 20 ASINs, how many successful tests or how many tests would I expect to be able to add to my list during that time?
Well, we say about 5 to 10%.
5 to 10%. Okay. So I'm looking at.
That's what we're shooting for. Again, you're not going to get that right up front, but you're just going to start shooting for that.
So let's say it's 5%. It doesn't mean exactly 5 out of every 100 are going to be there. Sometimes we have to, or in this case, it breaks down to 1 in 20, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that we're going to find for sure one every single hour. We may look at the first 40 and find nothing. And then we might look at the last 20 and find 4.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Happens all the time.
Fair? Okay.
Yeah.
So if we're trying to build our list of tests and we know that we're in that 5 to 10% success range, and I'm trying to send in 10 new ASINs, it's going to take a little bit of time investment to actually get to that point, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, it's possible that you could still look at 100, 200, 300 ASINs and come up empty. Let's dig into that a little bit.
Absolutely.
Why might that happen?
One reason is that you keep trying to, like you mentioned before, you keep trying too hard to find the source for an ASIN. If it's not right there on the front page of Google, I don't really go any further. Other people have different strategies and you have yours, but don't take too much time. Shoot for that 3 minutes if you're not getting it, and then shoot for improving that to 2 minutes and 1 minute. So I say it doesn't matter how anyone else sells it for that price. It's not my business, it's theirs. And there are so many different strategies in and out of this community. There are no rules about how you can and can't price your items on Amazon, except for if you get a high pricing error or where you can get those items. We have no idea. And spending time on that is going to slow you down. So if you're spending more than 3 minutes, make sure that you're not looking for a source for that ASIN that you really want to find a source, when you could have spent that 10 minutes you spent on that, you could have
looked at 3 more ASINs.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah. Okay, great point. I think that it's important to also cut yourself a little bit of slack here. Like we're not asking you to slack in the business, but don't necessarily put a clock. Someone standing there with a stopwatch saying, time's up. You got to get better at this. Oh, you spent 3 minutes last week. You got to do 2 minutes this week. This is a natural progression that's going to happen over time. You learn skills, you build on those skills. And as you continue to build on them, eventually you'll reach a point where within a couple of seconds, generally speaking, I say a couple of seconds, but within,
you know whether you're going to spend more time.
Yeah, you're like, okay, does this have opportunity for me? Like, have I had success by spending a little bit more time on this type of product before? No, like it's never worked out for me. So I know I'm not going to spend any more time. On the other hand, one of the things that we like to do is kind of evaluate those ASINs that have been successful for us. What is it about those ASINs that makes them testable? And then once they pass the test, what makes them go onto our REPLENS list? These are some of the things that the strategies that we're developing for our own business and sharing with people in various modules that are out there. How do we identify those types of ASINs that can be successful for us?
That's a really good point, Brian. Once you have a few in your bag, and this is more back to the, as you spend more time, you will get better at it. You will have ASINs to look at, to compare, to see what do these have in common. Different things will work for you than work for other people. It's just the nature of us as individuals and what we feel good about and what we don't feel good about. So let yourself build these things. We're not trying to, I like your stopwatch analogy where you sit and see if I can get it faster this time. We're not trying to make the Olympics team here. Okay. It's your business. You're doing it. You're on your own road. Stay on your road, stay in your lane, and learn what you need to learn to get to the next step. So, Brian, I would like for you, I had a couple of clients actually come to me and talk to me about the post that you posted where you opened up and told us how difficult it was for you I believe you said something like you were the king of I'm not getting this, or the king of I can't find anything.
Yeah, I'm the king of, I was the king of I can't find anything. I
tell us about that. Yeah.
Well, in the beginning, like after my first coaching session, I felt energized and I felt like, oh, I know exactly, I didn't say I know exactly what I'm doing, but I have enough like to kind of get going here. And I did. And I identified some things, made some purchases, had them delivered to our home. I, prepped them up, packaged them, sent them in, and then I go back to it. I actually didn't go right back to it. I waited because I sent them in and I waited. Okay, I want to make sure this is going to work.
Oh, you were hatching eggs.
Yes, I was hatching the eggs instead of continuing to go down the sourcing process. But even so, right, it went through the process. I had some items that sold. I got to go through the whole cycle of what does that look like. I sourced, I shopped, I prepped, I shipped. I refreshed my app screen to see how much I was selling. That's kind of the cycle, right? I mean, there's other administrative things that happen in the background, but then what happened? I lost that sort of initial momentum, and when I stopped having some of that immediate success, in other words, I didn't find anything low hanging fruit that I thought was worth it to me. Then I started distracting myself with other things that I thought might make the process easier or might offer more of an opportunity. For example, I was like, oh, well, I'm going to go learn about wholesale and let me be clear. I was learning REPLENS. Okay. That was my
brand new in the business.
I was brand new in the business, and this is what my coach was teaching me. And yet I'm going off and I'm going to go learn wholesale. I'm going to go learn private label. I'm going to go learn KDP. I'm going to go learn bundles. I'm going to go learn all these things. And all those things are great. And if that's your strategy,
absolutely.
Well, then pick that strategy and stick with it. Right. My strategy was REPLENS, and my coach must have been like, "Oh, would this guy just come back here, please?" And finish the process. Right. It was,
You're getting close. And
yes.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of time investment required where you have to, in order to achieve a level of, what's the word I'm looking for? Proficiency.
Yeah.
Right. And everyone has to spend that time. Right. Yeah. Sometimes that time can be compressed for some people, and other times it doesn't compress. It may take you 3-4 weeks, a couple of months, whatever it is. It could take whatever it takes.
Right.
Okay. So once I stopped distracting myself, or actually I remember coming out, I was telling you when I was sourcing, I was going through I thought I was sourcing. I was really making a new cover for a KDP
for 3 hours.
I was listening to a podcast, all the things that we talked about kind of before. I was doing all those things that weren't really adding value to the sourcing part of my business. So when my coach actually corralled me and said, okay, like, I'm going to hold you accountable to this. How many ASINs did you look at? What days of the week? How many hours per day? Right. And we started reviewing those results. That's when progress happened. That is when progress happened.
Yes. When you were able to be accountable and sit down and make yourself actually do the work that you had planned during the time you had planned for it.
This is the benefit of having a coach. And I'm not, we're not here saying you should go get a coach.
Yeah, you can absolutely be successful without a coach.
You absolutely can, yes. But sometimes it's nice just to have that sanity check. For me, and on a previous episode here, I think we talked about worth the price of admission.
Yeah.
So one of the WPAs for me in the coaching program was having my coach verify and validate that what I found was good.
Yeah.
Right? That was priceless.
I just had a client yesterday that we had decided, okay, this is going to be a good test. So let's go ahead and buy 3 of them, send them in and see how it does and see if we can sell this for what we needed to sell. And then the next session, she said, okay, I almost did it. And then the price changed and I panicked. I wanted to discuss it with you one more time. And I said, that is what I'm here for. Absolutely. Run it by me. We'll make you feel better about it. But then I reminded her that we already made sure that she's going to break even or above on this, even if it doesn't pass the test. She's probably going to make a little bit of money. So then she felt a little better. Now she's going to get that sent in and get some tests going.
That's a great little bit of words or whatever that you just dropped in the golden nuggets right there, right? She was going to break even. I mean, even if it, say it again. How did you say it?
Even if it didn't pass the test to make it onto the REPLENS list,
yes,
she was going to at least break even. We had evidence, no guarantees, but we had evidence that she would at least break even and probably make a little bit of money, even if it didn't go onto a REPLENS list. So
yeah, that's incredible. That right there should hopefully make people feel more comfortable with, remember, it's only a test. We're not getting married to this thing.
Right.
We're trying to source items that sort of our break-even price is below kind of the low price that we can establish for that ASIN that we're reviewing. And if that's the case, then we can test it pretty much all day long. And like you say, no guarantees, but strong evidence that we're going to be able to get out of that, even if it doesn't pass the test without and still make some money.
Right. And the investment is very small. So, no guarantees is probably going to be okay. But let's pull back just a little bit and see how the whole thing works in the beginning. We're talking to people who have just started sourcing and they haven't been sending anything in yet, or just a few things they found. In the beginning, you will look at it ASIN by ASIN by ASIN.
Mm-hmm.
You'll look at a lot of ASINs to find a few to test. And you'll test a lot of ASINs to find a few that pass the test and go onto your REPLENS list.
Mm-hmm.
And you will continue to do that until you can build that REPLENS list, that tested REPLENS list, up to about 75 or 100 ASINs.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, then we can kind of turn that on its side and look at it as a book of business.
Mm-hmm.
So I suggest that people take what they can get in the beginning to get some wins and get some experience.
Mm-hmm.
Lower that requirement to get on the REPLENS list to maybe 20% ROI. I know that seems low and it won't seem like it's worth it. But during that first 75 or 100 ASINs, you have to get that built in order to bring that up. Once that's built, you can start replacing those 20% ASINs with 25% ASINs and those 25% ASINs with 30% and on and make it as good as you want. You can just keep lifting that bar over time, but you need a book of business to work with. And that's your initial goal, is to get that book of business to work with, something that you can win on. You may not be winning very much at the beginning, but that's okay. We will help you improve it.
Well, I think it's a great point. And I had a little note here, what I'm calling lowering the bar. And it's just to give ourselves a little more or a lot more opportunities to be successful, right?
Yeah.
So what we do in that case is when we're evaluating whether we're going to test an item, we're looking at, does it have a minimum? Do I have a good opportunity to sell it for the minimum that I would take on this?
Yeah.
It could be 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%.
Yeah, you still get to decide what
You
that
decide
is.
what that is. For us, it's 20%. Now, just because
To start with.
just because it is, say, minimum 20%, doesn't mean I'm ever going to buy it. What that means is I'm going to put it on my list of tests.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm also going to sort my list of tests by the highest profitability. So just because I, put it on my list at 20% doesn't mean I'm actually going to buy that. I hopefully have some things that are 40, 50, 100% on there that I'm going to use for my test. Then I don't have to go to the 20% one. But the reason I think it's so important to keep the ones at 20% is, like I was explaining to someone, we don't want to get skunked. We need to get a fish.
Right.
We need to get a fish. We need to put it in the boat, or we need to make sure that we're getting some successes so we can get that
some momentum
going. Yes. Right.
We think alike.
Yeah. So once we get that momentum going, then we'll find that, the things that you focus on, you create more of. And if we're focusing on, I can find testable ASINs, I can find testable ASINs at 20%, I can find testable ASINs at 50%, or 80%, whatever it is, then that's what you're going to get more of.
Yeah, agreed. And remember, just because it is 20% minimum doesn't mean that you don't have potential of making even more on that same ASIN. It's just a test with potential, and we're going to see how much of that potential we can realize.
Right. Like, I think it's important to point out, we're talking about 20% minimum. Okay.
We're talking return on investment.
And we're talking about return on investment. But that doesn't mean that it might not be at 60% when we put it on our test list. All it means is 20% was where we kind of drew the line. Right?
So you're saying we might see potential for 60% ROI.
Yeah.
And we're going to send it in at 60% ROI. But then if it doesn't sell at 6%, we're going to start lowering that price. And we're going to do that for about 30 days. And see, this is how we do it and how we teach our clients to do it. We're going to put that in for about 30 days. During that time, we have space between whatever our potential was, and we'll tell you how we got there in a minute, whatever our potential was and our minimum requirement to sell it someplace in there. Hopefully we'll be in the middle of the pack. Like Jim has taught us, ignore the buy box, sell somewhere in the middle of the pack. Hopefully we'll end up there. We'll put it on our REPLENS list and we'll move on. If we get to 30 days and we're all the way down at our minimum requirements, then we're probably just going to drop that price, get out, sell our 3 and move on. It didn't pass the test.
It didn't pass the test. Yeah.
But we might have made 4% ROI on it. We might have made a few cents on it. What's wrong with that? In 30 days, 45 days.
Yeah. And so you said this last night when we were in a different conversation. You're actually getting paid to learn.
Right. So that college class that I was talking about where I had to commit to certain hours, I paid a lot of money for that. In this case, we're actually getting paid while we're learning. This is a great, almost like an internship, right?
Right. point is, if we make it so that we're going to be successful, we set the system up for us to succeed, to include our minimum ROI, then we can put fish in the bucket like that, or in the boat, whatever. That's to start the process. We have to source, we have to shop, we have to prep, we have to ship, and we have to do the administrative stuff.
Yeah.
And none of those things are going to happen until we can get things on our list of tests.
Yeah,
right?
It is the first thing we have to get through. And we were talking about with the boys, we have 2 grandsons, 7 and 4, love them to death. They do is it a lion? They're hunting for a lion going on, a bear hunt going on, a bear hunt. Yeah. And then they come up to the grass, the tall grass. And they say, I can't go over it. I can't go under it. I can't go around it. I got to go through it.
Yeah.
And every obstacle they come to, they got to go through it.
Yeah.
And our 7 and 4-year-old grandsons know this. So we decided that we
should
to
probably
adopt
know that too. Yeah. No, and it's
Yeah.
true. It's like the sourcing, curve that everyone has to go through. But yeah, there's no going around it. If you distract yourself, it doesn't help. You still are going to have to go through it. And it's painful. It's uncomfortable. I say painful. It's not physically painful.
No.
But it can be uncomfortable, but we all have to go through it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's awesome. Know that you're going to get better at this over time.
Absolutely.
Every aspect of this process that we've been talking about.
Right.
When we get into a coaching session sometimes and we're explaining and demonstrating how to do this, Robin and I can pretty quickly pick out, this is when we're looking at a list of items, we can kind of pick one out and go, I bet that one's going to be good.
Yeah.
And we get in there and sometimes it is.
Yeah.
Not always.
Right.
But our chances of identifying those good ones are higher. But we've been doing it for 4 years. I've been doing it for 4 years. You've been doing it for 3.5 years, right? It's something that, you develop that skill over time. You get really good at it.
Right.
And I like to give that disclaimer when I'm working with a coaching client. I'm really good at this. And I'm not saying that to brag. It's because I've been doing it for 4 years. You've been doing it for 4 minutes. You're not very good at it, right?
Right.
So we're going to take you.
Okay.
Let it be okay, right?
Yeah.
Just
everybody
know
wants to be the best.
you are only going to get to be in that space one time.
Yeah.
And that's right now, if that's you, right?
Yeah.
You're only at this struggle. And trust me, I tell the story about, how I'm the king of not finding anything. It was way more painful then, mentally than it is today.
Yeah. Now we can look back and go, oh, yeah, I remember when that happened. But at the time, it was like you were coming out of the office. And I said, did you find anything? No. It was tough. It was tough, but you stuck with it and you found a way to get through it. It took a little more time than it takes for some people. But those people who do it very quickly they're not the norm. It's okay.
Well, that was the thing that really kind of inspired me about this community is that I heard people on the podcast that they reminded me of other people in my life. I know someone like that. I know someone like that. Wait, they figured this out in a good way. Like, one of my friends who can't spend more than 2 minutes on anything has figured out how to do this. Okay, then I can figure this out. And so I go in there with a failure is not an option. That's what I kept telling myself. Failure is not. And
you did say that out loud a lot.
Right? But I also knew that failure was it was only an option if I let it be. Right. Failure is not an option. If you decide that failure's not an option, not a choice for you, then it won't happen.
You're the only one that can hold that.
Yes, you're the only one who's going to give yourself the out in that situation. And all you have to do is look around this community and see that, like I said earlier, the thousands of success stories to know it's possible. Yes, you may struggle. That's okay.
It may take some time.
It may take some time. But if you don't give up, if you keep at it, pretty soon that click is going to happen and you're going to be like, oh, yeah, okay, now this is making more sense. Now, I would still throw up a word of caution there just because you think you got it figured out. You probably don't yet because there are days that I'm like, we still don't know what we're doing. Yeah.
And things change all the time. You have to get good at adjusting.
Right. So when it does click for you, doesn't mean like go big. Right? No. We're still testing. We're still doing inch deep, mile wide. We're still doing all the things that, the strategies and the concepts that are taught here.
That's right. That's right. Because we don't want to raise our risk too high. When we don't have to. This is a great opportunity to make return very quickly. And, compared to other businesses, we're doing really, really well at, making 20%, turning that over once a month or 45 days. That's pretty good. Ask anybody in any other business.
That's not to get off on another rabbit trail, but the opportunity that we have in this business. A lot of people will say, what did you make in your 401k last year? How did your investment accounts do? Oh, I got like 11%.
Yeah.
On the year?
For the year?
Oh, yeah. In old school days, like when I was younger, I'd be like, oh, that's awesome. I want to get 11%.
Right. That was before I knew about getting 20, 30, 40% in 60 days.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And then it has progressed, right?
Yeah.
And now we're like, oh, wait, I can get 20% in a year? No. I can get 20% in a quarter? No, I can get 20% in a month.
Right. And then I can turn that over and get 20% more on that 20%.
And here's the thing: we keep saying 20%. That's not what how our business is based.
No, we're just talking about minimums.
Kind of worst case scenario situation.
Before. So, absolutely.
Okay.
There's more than that, but even that is what we're saying would be good.
Yeah.
All right, let's go one more place here, Brian, before we be. So if we have a schedule for sourcing, we're actually doing the sourcing. We're really doing everything we need to do to find ASINs, and we have counted how many, we're narrowed down the time we're spending on it, but we're still not finding them. What's the next step? What do you tell them next?
Right. And I had that thought earlier. I'm glad you came back to it because I had it for a second and then it left me. So here's what it is.
That happens to you?
Yeah, I know.
We see it. We can
frequency.
see that. Yeah.
You can see the eyes glaze over. No, for us, when that starts happening, and it does happen from time to time.
It does.
Right? It's usually because something about the category that I'm in, something about the price point that I'm in, something about, we use a Keepa a lot of times. So there could be something that's kind of messed up in my filters or settings that is not quite right. And it's leading me into a place where I'm not having as much success. So a lot of times I'll just start all over.
Yeah.
Like go back to the drawing board and say, I'm going to...
These aren't going anywhere.
Yes, right. Yeah. So if you're finding, if you were doing Keepa sourcing and you're like, well, I just keep looking and, I keep looking and I'm not finding anything. And every category search that you're doing or every keyword is related to the toys category, change it up. Go in a completely different direction, right? We got to change the source of what we're doing to give us kind of a new set of data to evaluate.
Yeah.
Right? Is that
Absolutely.
kind of where you were going with that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if that's the next thing that you tell your clients, then I agree with that. Yeah. Change things up, try a different tactic. And there are many, many ways that you can find ASINs and find sources. So try some different things. We use many ways within Keepa, as you know, but there are many ways to listen to podcast 555, I believe it is. It's the one right after Ignore the Buy Box, 554. Yeah. And Jim talks about several different ways to find ASINs that would make good tests. But I also like to go with defining what do you consider a good test? Maybe you're passing by things that you should be testing and you're not recognizing those. So while in the beginning, we like to give you some clear guidelines if we can, you will throw these away probably or stretch these out once you get, 7,500 ASINs and you're looking at it as a book of business. But to get started, sometimes you need some yes or no answers because it's a little scary. You don't have that experience. So we've put together kind of a 3-step process that will give you yeses and nos that we're going to share with you that might help you kind of pull the trigger a little bit easier. And those include making sure that you have evidence that you can break even or above. So we don't want you to throw your money away. We want you to invest safely in your ASINs. And there are no guarantees, but we can try to keep that risk as low as possible. So what's the first thing that we do in our 3-step process? I'm just going to lay it out for you. It's velocity, it is break even, and it is potential profit.
Okay.
So those are the 3 things we're going to go on. So how do I know if I have enough velocity, Brian?
I have Keepa plugin installed on my browser, and I go to the bottom of the Keepa chart, and there's a little statistics thing. And if I actually, I don't even have to hover it. It tells me how many drops per month on right there at the bottom of the Keepa chart.
On average, for the last 90 days.
Right. And so I know, does it meet my criteria just by looking at that number? And for us, that's going to be 30,
at
40,
least.
30. Well, that's why it's minimum.
Yes.
Yes. So yeah, 30. I'm looking for 30 drops. This is different. Like when I first started out doing this, I was focusing on things that had minimum 5 drops, right?
Right.
For us back in those days, if it was like between 5 and 15 drops, that was kind of the sweet spot. But that got us into trouble sometimes too, because we would send in tests and they weren't moving.
We couldn't get back out of it.
It's tough to get out of it when it only has 5 keep drops a month sometimes,
right? Even if we lowered the
even
price,
if I want to break even.
I'm still waiting.
Right, I'm waiting. So
I need that money back so I can try it on something else.
Moved our sights a little bit and focused more on those faster moving ASINs so that if I want to get out tomorrow, I can.
Yeah.
Right. And I can get my capital back plus a little bit of profit and go and do something else if I want to. Okay. Absolutely. So that's velocity.
That's velocity. And that's a good reason that we test velocity. And this was inspired, this thing that we set up was inspired by Jim's podcast 554, Jim Cockrum. Silent Sales Machine podcast 554, where he talks about ignoring the buy box. You don't have to compete in the buy box. There is money for you outside of there without being so competitive.
Okay.
And we were competing at that time. Okay.
Yeah. But
in the buy box. Second one, break-even test. So what I want to know, and a lot of your on-page calculators like AZ Insight and RevSeller will tell you this as soon as you put your cost in there, is what I'm going to have to sell this for in order to break even. In other words, I can get all my money back.
Right.
Okay.
So why does the break even part matter?
Because I want evidence that I'm not going to throw my money away. I want historical evidence that that price is not going to dip down below my break even price for longer than 7 to 10 days, because I want to be able to know that if I need to lower my price and get out of there, I can get all my money back. No guarantees, but we want strong evidence of that. So I kind of draw a line on the keep a chart, and I usually look at 3 months. There are reasons, times when I'll look at more than that, but I usually just stick with 3 months, keep it quick, and kind of draw a line at the lowest price, except for anomalies where that price has been during the last 3 months.
All right. So just let me help give the visual here.
Okay.
We're looking at an ASIN.
Yeah.
And for the most part, if I'm looking for the most consistent bottom buy box price, that's kind of where I'm drawing that line. But I could have outliers that I'm excluding. Those outliers could be maybe a day where the price dropped by $5, or a 3-hour period where the price dropped by $2, or whatever. But most of the time, that's my sort of baseline, what we call our basement. Right?
We call the basement.
We call the basement. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and that's on the keep it chart. So why do we use the buy box price for that? Well, because that's the easy way to tell what the average price was on that day. That doesn't mean we're going to price it according to the buy box. We're just looking to make sure that those lower prices, which are usually the buy box prices, don't dip too low. Okay. So we're building in low risk there. We're building in some safety for ourselves.
And so we've only done 2 things, and we can already determine whether we're going to go any further in evaluating that ASIN, right?
Right. So if it had not met the velocity test, what would you do?
Move on to the next.
Move on to the next ASIN.
Right. So that's seconds. We can tell that in seconds, right?
Yes.
Right off the bat. So this helps bring your average per ASIN down,
right?
When you are looking at this. Now, the other thing you can do is stack the deck in your favor when you're using Keepa by setting some of those filters in the back end to produce a list that you're sourcing from. Everything that you look at will meet your velocity test. Theoretically, it does need a sanity check, but an eyeball check.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Then if it didn't meet my break-even assessment, I'd move on to the next ASIN.
Okay, break-even assessment. Now, all we did was we figured in the break-even. We figured out what that was. We haven't done the assessment yet because we needed to figure out what the basement was.
Right. So we didn't get there.
Okay.
So I know what my basement is. And so let's say my break-even is $19.95, and that I need to sell it for to cover my costs and my expenses and my fees, right? Then I look and find that basement on the Keep It chart, my recent low price, so to speak. And if that recent low price is above my break-even price, then I've passed my assessment.
Then we get to step number 3 of the 3-step check,
right?
Which is
potential profitability.
Potential profitability. Oh, okay. So it's not enough just for it to break even, right?
It's not worth testing if
Not-
we're not going to have a chance to get it on our replens list.
Right. We yeah. If it doesn't also meet our minimum requirements for return on investment, then we're going to be out and on to the next ASIN to evaluate. Right.
Right.
So you draw that line where it's comfortable for you and your business. For us, we draw that line minimum at 20%, and that's above break even.
Mhm.
What's the other potential for profitability? Anything above that, 25%? That
Mhm.
spread is what we're looking for, right?
Right.
Above 20, up to whatever, 100, 200%.
Whatever it is.
Mhm.
And how do we know what that is?
Okay, so how we know what that is we're looking at that same 90-day time frame in Keep It, and we're looking for the highest buy box price that we've seen on there.
If it's ever been that price, even anomalies.
Even if it was for 1 day or 4 hours or whatever. This is how we capture kind of the range that ASIN is selling in. And I understand that a lot of times we don't see a sale that is outside the buy box sometimes. Like, the buy box may say it's $24. We know we have evidence, not just not a preponderance of evidence. We have hard evidence because we've sold that ASIN at $26 and the buy box indicator didn't change on the Keep It chart.
Right.
Okay. So we want to give ourselves at least, the highest opportunity there, which is that high point. So
we can always go down on our price.
Right. But just to clarify, on the bottom side, we are ignoring the anomalies.
Right.
On the top side, we are including the anomalies.
Right.
That gives us our stretch in there, right? I said the word a minute ago and forgot about it.
Expand the range.
The range. It gives us the biggest range, the opportunity for our opportunity to make additional profit.
Yes.
Wow. So you actually have a video on this.
I do.
Maybe we can attach this on the end of the video. We can attach that video on the end of this.
Maybe so. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll ask the people who do that.
Yeah. Anyway, helps make that a little bit more clear in terms of how do I determine whether this can be a test? How can I add more items to my list of tests so that you can eventually get more things onto your replens list?
So 3 steps to decide if it's test worthy.
Mm-hmm.
Does it pass the velocity assessment? Does it have enough movement that I know I can get out of it if it works or doesn't work?
Mm-hmm.
Does it pass the break even assessment? Have I got pretty good evidence that I'm going to break even or above? And I'll probably make a little bit of money, even if it doesn't meet my requirements to go on my replens list.
Mm-hmm.
And does it have a potential profit enough to meet my requirements to go on my replens list?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what I'm testing for. Does it have enough profit to go onto my replens list? So those 3 things are yes or no questions. We told you how to find them. So hopefully you'll be able to know how to find ASINs to test. And we start those tests at the very highest price.
Mm-hmm.
And then between, like we said earlier in this podcast, between the start available and the 30 days available, then we will lower that price and see what we can get somewhere probably, hopefully in the middle of the pack.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go all the way down to our minimum requirements. And if it doesn't sell for that within 30 days, then we'll go ahead and drop our price and get our money back. Probably make a little bit of profit and move on to the next ASIN.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense?
I have a vision.
Yes. Oh dear.
I know. So it's like, I like to,
Every time I have a vision, I find myself in a new business.
No, it's like, I think about when we go fishing.
Yeah.
Right. And we fish from the shore, or we
Usually,
fish from a boat, but we're casting our lure, usually like I'm doing fly or lure fishing, right? Not bait fishing. And when I throw that out into the water, the best feeling is when it gets hit right there. And that's when I do that, it's as far as I can get it out there.
Right.
And when I get a bite, when it's way out there, that is the most fun fish to catch because I have all that time to reel them in back to the, whatever. And just, I don't keep the fish, I put them back. But it's so fun versus if I'm reeling, that I'm pulling my bait in and versus when it happens right at the shore, it's not nearly as exciting because, I got him right there and I'm all done, right?
You got a fish.
I did get a fish, right.
There's some joy in that. And that also speaks to Why do you cast it as far as you can possibly cast it?
You're trying to
Because
cover more ground.
you want to have all the chance from the time you get that lure out there to the time it comes back to your fishing rod, all that time you have to catch. So the broader that span, the more time you have, the more opportunity you have to catch fish.
Yep, that's right. The more fish will get to see that lure.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
All right.
With
So,
that, I think we've gone a little bit too far in the weeds.
We've got a little bit, but hopefully we've helped encourage you to know that you're not alone. We all go through those tough times in the beginning.
Yeah.
It does take time. Give yourself a break and, just pin it down. Try to make it better and better every day.
Yep. Give yourself a system, set the system up for to be in your favor, and then execute. You got to execute.
Yep. You can do it.
All right. Well, it's been our pleasure to be here today. We hope to see you back soon. Any final words?
If you can't find the reason, you say it better.
If your business is struggling, what solves that problem?
More ASINs.
More ASINs. Yes, more ASINs. All right.
ASINs.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. I'm Robin Joy, and I'm going to work with you today on finding ASINs that are worth testing. First of all, we're going to assess the ASIN testworthiness by applying 4 different assessments. And if they pass all of these assessments, then it might be worth testing. First of all, we need a source. We need a place we can buy this item from. We need a reputable supplier of the product or products in the ASIN that is regularly stocked and at a predictable price. We'll get into each of these a little bit more as we go along. We need to make sure there's high enough velocity. We need evidence of a sales history that would allow the turnover of inventory within 30 to 45 days. We need low capital risk. We don't want to lose money on our test. So we need to make sure that the risk of losing money is pretty low. And we do that by finding evidence of a history of average sales prices that are above our break-even price. And we need potential profit. We need evidence of a history of average sales prices at or above our desired profitability. All right, let's go into these a little bit more each as we go. A reputable supplier of product or products in the ASIN. We're going to break this down. We need to avoid other third-party sellers from any platform. So places like eBay, Facebook Marketplace, Mercari, Poshmark, those are all third-party sellers. So we want to avoid those completely. Walmart and Amazon both have third-party sellers as well as sellers as they sell themselves. So if we use Walmart or Amazon as a source, we want to make sure that Walmart is the seller. If we're using Walmart, we want to make sure that Amazon is the seller if we're using Amazon, not a third-party seller. And we don't want to use thrift store items for our replenishments. Now, all of these have exceptions and all of these have different strategies that they might work for. But for building our replens list when we're starting out, this is where we're going to start. So no third-party sellers. And the reason for that is because we can't prove authenticity. If Amazon comes back to us one day and says, yeah, somebody complained and they said this wasn't real. Well, we need to have a receipt that we bought that from a reputable supplier and offer that so that they can we can show that that is an authentic product. We need to avoid unsafe websites. Now, why is that? They might take your money and not give you any product. So if you're not sure about the website, I don't really have a list of ways that you can make sure. They're getting so good anymore at making websites that look completely legitimate. And they have their Better Business Bureau symbols on there. They take PayPal. There just aren't a lot of good ways to tell. So if you're not sure, I would encourage you to test the website before you test your product. Test the website by using a credit card, if you can, that protects you from fraud in case something like that happens. Buying something small, make sure you receive it. Don't spend too much money. make sure that they're going to do what they say they're going to do before you go giving them a whole bunch of business. And also, we want to make sure that the product is exactly the same from the source as it is on the Amazon listing. We want to make sure it's the same size, weight, the same style, ingredients, version, color. Everything needs to be exactly the same. Next, we're going to make sure that it's regularly stocked at the source. So that doesn't mean it can't go out of stock once in a while, because if it's real popular, it probably will go out of stock once in a while. And those can be very, very good for your REPLENS list. But you want to avoid seasonal items. We want this to be regular and even all year long and not have spikes where we have to do something different in one part of the year than we do in the other part of the year. Now, we'll add to this after we get our REPLENS list built. But in the beginning, when you're first testing items to build your REPLENS list, make sure it's not a seasonable item or a limited edition. We need a predictable price. That means the regular price, the price we can buy it for all the time, is the price we're going to use for our assessment. Now, if it's on sale, does that mean we can't take the sale price? Of course we can. It's just that it won't be on sale all the time. If we test it and then we go back and get it because it passes our test, we're not using the same price if it's not on sale anymore. And then using that price, it might not have passed the test. So for the assessment, use the regular price. And then if you can't find a source that meets these requirements, then stop your assessment, move on to the next ASIN. Don't waste time going through all these different steps. Just go one step at a time, kind of like a flow chart. If it doesn't meet the first one, then it's not going to meet all of them. So stop there, go to the next ASIN and begin assessing that ASIN. If it does pass the test or the assessment of the appropriate source, then go to the next assessment, which is high velocity. We want evidence of a sales history that would allow the turnover of inventory within 30 to 45 days. So how do we assess that? Well, we know that one sales rank drop represents at least one sale. And this green line on this Keepa chart that I've used as an example, the green line is the sales rank. So when that drops, that represents at least one sale, maybe more sales, but it's at least one sale, and that's what we can count on. So it's not always easy to see where those drops are. And remember, none of this is an exact science. You'll get used to it. You have to try it and get some experience. But you don't have to be an expert at reading a Keepa chart in order to see if it's got enough velocity. All we need to do is look here for the average sales rank per month in the last 90 days. And my arrow's a little bit off here, but that is right where it's pointing. That arrow where it's pointing is 62 drops per month on average for the last 90 days. And that's the number we're looking for. Another place that shows up is here in the statistics box. If you hover over that word statistic, it brings up a box that shows you that same number along with some other average prices. So what we know is that we can count on this number enough to start our test. You don't have to be an expert at reading Keepa to do this. Just know how many Keepa drops or sales rank drops that you have on average per month. I recommend that be over 30 for your test when you're beginning out. More is better. You decide what will work for you. There are exceptions to that. But as a general rule, I recommend that be at least 30 per month, which would represent at least 30 sales per month, if not more. Don't overthink it. You don't have to be an expert. It is that easy to figure out the velocity. The velocity is too low, stop your assessment and move on to the next ASIN. If it's not, move on to the next assessment of the same ASIN. We want to make sure that we have a low risk of losing that capital. If we're going to test it, we don't want to lose all the capital. Now, keep in mind that we're testing small amounts, maybe three, 4, 5 of an item. So if you're paying $10 for that, that's $30. So it's not a large amount of money, but that can be a significant amount of the capital you have for testing when you start out. So you want to make sure that you're not going to lose that capital if you can help it. There are no guarantees, but here's how we find evidence of a history of average sales prices that are above our break-even price, which is what we want to find. First of all, we want to find out what is our break-even price. That will consist of your total cost, what you paid to buy the item yourself, your any fees, your referral fee, fulfillment fee, the Amazon fees, and any expenses that you might have. You might put in a little bit for inbound shipping. You might have a cost for prep or materials. Include all of those. When you add those up, that's your break-even price. That's how much you'll have to sell this item for in order not to lose money. Now, that's not what you want. You want profit. You want to sell it for more than that. But it's only a test, and we don't know if we can yet. We want to try to make sure that at least have good evidence that we're not going to lose money. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to find the historical low price, or I call it the basement price, that the listing sells at. And if we look at this pink line, that's the buy box price. If there's no buy box, it might be a blue line, which is the new price, or the price of a new item on average that's featured at that time. So we want to kind of throw a filter over this, and this is imaginary. You see where the lowest price there's a line there, and that's what I would call the basement, right there around $14. So if my break-even price is below $14, my break-even price is $12 or $13, then I know that likely I'm not going to hit that break-even price, and I'm not going to lose my money. I might make a little bit of money, even if it doesn't pass my test. So that's the kind of test that you want. You want it to have a history of not going below your break-even price, and if it does not for more than a couple days where you can hold out. If the basement is too low and your break-even price is $15 or $16 in this case, then you want to move on to another ASIN. If it is not, and your break-even price stays below that basement, move on to the next assessment. The next assessment is potential profit. Now, we want to make money. We don't want to just break even. We want to make money with our test, right? So what we need is evidence that in the history of sales, that price goes to our desired profitability or above. So in order to find that, we're going to find what I call the ceiling price. So here we go. We have our basement. We already know where that is. And we're going to put our ceiling price up here. You see where the highest price it's been recently, right here, it goes up to that price right around $17. And if you hover over while you're looking at an actual chart on a listing, it'll show you exactly what that number is. So we're going to determine if that ceiling price gives us the profitability that we're looking for or not. Now, remember, when it comes to profitability, you may not get exactly what you're shooting for in the future, what your best profitability would be. But if you have profitability at all, that's a good place to start. And then as you build your REPLENS list, you can take out those ones that are lower profitability and build that higher. But in the beginning, a little bit of profit is better than no profit. And the experience of getting this started is going to be well worth any that don't pass the test. So if the ceiling is too low to be profitable for you, in other words, it might be a real small band instead of that wider band, and you're not going to be profitable, then discontinue the test. It's not worth testing. But if it does meet all those requirements, your appropriate source, you have high velocity, you have a low capital risk, and you have a potential profit. Your risk of losing your capital is low. I'll rephrase that. So then if all these things are true, then test about 3, maybe up to 5 by buying those, sending them to Amazon's FBA warehouse. You're going to begin your price at that ceiling price, the highest price that you think you can get it, because you don't want to sell it for less than that if you could sell it for higher than that. Then you might need to adjust your price as it becomes necessary to get that item to sell within 30 to 45 days. And that's the process of testing, where that ends up, and wherever you do end up selling it, then you can determine, does that pass my test? Does that work for me to replenish that item or not? If it doesn't, get your money back, sell those items out, get your money back so that you can go test something else with it. If it does, go ahead and put it on your replens list, and we're going to replenish that item about a month's worth at a time. And that's a month's worth that will sell for you, not the total sales. You won't get all of the sales, but what it'll sell for you each month. So that's how we assess whether an item, an ASIN, is going to be test worthy or not, and whether we want to send that in as a test. Thanks. I hope that's helpful.